I'm Carol Angela Davis with your reality news check video blog. Today, of course, is Tuesday, September 20th, 2011. We begin, as we always do, with your headlines. There is some drama in business news today, folks. We'll tell you about it. Also today, a credit downgrade for Italy. Plus, President Obama tells Republicans it's not class warfare, folks. It's math. Also today, Texas Governor Rick Perry, he wants to be president in 2012. Well, you better hope he's not bragging about his accomplishments in Texas. We'll tell you about them. Also today, cantaloupes that are killing people. Then police say this hockey bomb had sex with teens. And then finally today, there is good news over at Bristol-Myers Squibb for a hepatitis C drug. Let's begin in business news. Folks, was there insider trading before the U.S. government's long-term credit rating was cut by Standard & Poor's? That's what U.S. securities regulators want to know. And they've reportedly sent subpoenas to hedge funds. There you go, folks. You count on those hedge funds to really mess things up. To hedge funds and other trading firms to try and find out. Now, regulators looking at specific trades, this is what we hear, made shortly before Standard & Poor's downgraded the country's rating to AA+ from AAA. That happened, as you know, on August 5th. Specifically, the Securities and Exchange Commission is looking at firms that bet the stock market would tumble. That's what I call patriotism, folks. Bet against your country. I'll bet you they're going to be sending a subpoena out to Goldman Sachs. How much you want to bet? Because we know they're in it. The question is, why were certain trades made? I can't wait to see the outcome of that investigation. Also, in business news, this time in international news, bad news for Italy as Standard & Poor's cuts that country's debt rating. Standard & Poor's cut its rating by one level to A from A+. Standard & Poor's citing Italy's weak growth. The Italian Prime Minister saying the move was influenced by political considerations. Well, we know that can happen. Adding that the downgrade was dictated more by stories in the media than by economic reality. Apparently, the big issue in Italy affecting the economic situation, the big issues in Italy affecting the economic situation are, number one, the government's inability to deal decisively with widespread tax evasion at all levels, and the general lack of stimulus that it gives to the economy. Now, Italy is now expected to cut its growth forecast for this year from 1.1% to 0.7%. This may force it to revise its borrowing forecast up. Well, here's what some Italians are saying. They say, quote, I think part of the solution lies in President Obama's statement that the richest should pay more taxes. This would be a start, unquote. Just so you know, Italy follows Spain, the Republic of Ireland, Greece, Portugal, and Cyprus in having its credit rating downgraded this year. Italy has Europe's second largest debt level. Let's turn now to the pharmaceuticals. We're over at Bristol-Myers Squibb. There is good news. An experimental hepatitis C drug reportedly worked in combination with two established medicines to cure as many as 83% of patients. Isn't that wonderful? Well, if approved, analysts say the Bristol-Myers drug may generate sales of $125 million by the end of December 2015. You should know that about 170 million people worldwide, including 3 million here in the United States, have chronic hepatitis C. It's a blood-borne disease that can lead to liver cirrhosis and to cancer. No vaccine exists for the virus, which is usually spread by sharing needles and can be transmitted sexually in rare cases. Over at the White House, President Obama is defending his proposal to raise taxes on the wealthy. The president also saying he is going to veto any deficit reduction plan from Congress that cuts entitlement programs but does not raise taxes on the wealthy. The Republicans, as you know, call that class warfare, but the president says no, it's just good math. Obama's $3 trillion deficit-cutting plan includes $1.5 trillion in tax hikes on the wealthy, including the elimination of Bush-era tax rates on households with annual incomes above $250,000. The president saying a decade of unchecked spending has gone on, and now every American has to pitch in and pay their fair share. And that's not all. He also said of the plan being put forth by Ohio Republican and House Speaker John Boehner that it is simply not smart because he says, on the one hand, Boehner is saying that a my way or the highway approach to this will not work, and on the other hand, Boehner says increased revenue should be off the table. The president, of course, saying you can't have it both ways. The president also remarking on Republicans who signed those pledges. You remember those pledges? They signed those pledges that they wouldn't raise taxes. That's why they say they can't raise taxes on the wealthy. Well, here's what the president says about that. He says, quote, "The only pledge that really matters is the pledge we take to defend the Constitution," unquote. Okay? Now, you should know this. You're hearing stuff about Medicare. You should know that Obama is proposing $248 billion in cuts and reforms to Medicare. But here's what you need to know. 90% of which will come from reducing overpayments, which is really sick that we're overpaying people to that extent. That's a doggone shame. Of course, you know he's going to close those loopholes. And he's also going to end about $400 billion in deductions for the wealthy. In the race for the presidency 2012, look at Texas, folks. Texas Governor Rick Perry, he wants to be president, folks. He says he's the man for the job. But apparently, if you're back home in Texas, there isn't much to brag about, folks. That's right. Nearly 1 in 5 Texans, did you know this? They are living below the poverty line. That's okay. We got enough of that problem. All right. In fact, Texas is 6th in terms of people living in poverty. Some 18.4% of Texans were impoverished in 2010. That is up from 17.3% a year earlier. That is according to the Census Bureau. And we should tell you that the national average is about 15%, so they're already 3 percentage points above the national average. There is more. Texas has one of the lowest rates of spending on its citizens per capita and the highest share of those lacking health insurance. No to Rick Perry, folks. And Texas Neighborhood Services says this. The middle class are losing their jobs and not able to replace them fast enough. That is driving them straight into poverty, folks. And what about all those new jobs Rick Perry says he's responsible for creating in Texas? Well, apparently, many of the positions that have been created are on the lower end of the pay scale. In fact, some 9.5% of Texas hourly workforce are minimum wage workers, the highest percentage in the nation. That, folks, puts Texas on par with Mississippi. No, we do not want that man running this country. All right, let's take a look at some health news real quick. Watch those cantaloupes. So far, 4 people are dead in an outbreak of listeria traced to Colorado cantaloupes. That is the word from the Centers for Disease Control and Prevention. 1 death occurred in Colorado, 1 in Oklahoma, and 2 in New Mexico. The CDC is saying that 35 people in 10 states have already gotten sick. The problem has been traced to fruit from Jensen Farms in Holly, Colorado. Jensen Farms, you should know, recalled its Rocky Ford brand cantaloupes last week after the illnesses were linked to the fruit. The recalled cantaloupes were shipped from July 29th through September 10th, and they were shipped to Illinois, Wyoming, Tennessee, Utah, Texas, Colorado, Minnesota, also Kansas, New Mexico, North Carolina, Missouri, Nebraska, Oklahoma, Arizona, New Jersey, New York, and Pennsylvania. The FDA, says it's possible the company distributed to other states as well. Symptoms of listeria include fever and muscle aches like the flu, often with other gastrointestinal symptoms. In crime news today, folks, from California, an Orange County mother of 3 is accused of having sex with teenage members of her son's youth hockey team. Gee, thanks, Mom. Her name, Kathia Maria Davis, 44. Police say they arrested her at her Laguna Niguel home on suspicion of unlawful sex with a minor. Police say there may be as many as 3 victims. The first victim, under 16 years of age when the sexual contact began. It allegedly continued for several years. The second victim may have been under 14 years old. We should tell you that Davis is divorced and has 3 children. How could she? Those, folks, are your stories on this Reality News Check video blog. I am Carol Angela Davis. I thank you for joining me. I'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, new stories. Have a great day.